So then just the other thing is, as you know, think about like when you learn a language, think about a language like nonviolent communication. When you start learning it, it's very awkward. It takes a lot of effort. It's clumsy. It doesn't really work for connection. Just like when you're learning Spanish or Arabic, it's very difficult to get the words out. But for those of us here who now speak English fluently, we're not thinking about how to speak. Something is flowing through us and the words just come. We're not consciously imagining how to come up with the word because that skill has been internalized. And living from the heart, speaking in a nonviolent way, practicing observation, knowing a very rich feeling vocabulary, tuning into your needs, inhabiting your body, responding with compassion instead of judgment. Every one of these are skills that you can practice and internalize so that they become your default way of being. But when somebody is in a freeze, their nervous system has hijacked, okay? And they've become immobilized. And it's because they're afraid. And the first thing that they need is safety. They need safety, they need containment, they need to be seen, to be heard. So you start putting a focus on what they might be needing. They are disconnected from their needs in that moment. Their strategy is to escape from the situation. To the degree that you can begin verbalizing, naming what you're observing and what is happening, you begin to give them a bridge out of the disconnected interiority and back into relationship. And tone of voice is very, very important, and pacing is very, very important. So even just saying, you know, it looks like you don't want to look at me right now. It looks like there's a lot of fear coming through you right now. Is that what's happening? And then, so you want to do a little bit of just naming what's happening. And then what you want to actually do with a freeze response is begin coaching somebody out of it. If you empathize with a freeze response, it gets stronger. So you start coaching somebody out of it. So would it help if you just looked at me for a minute, or just looked at me for a second? Just look up for one moment. I just want you to see me here with you. If it's somebody that you have a close relationship with, you might say, would it be okay if I just put my hand here on your knee? Can you feel my hand? I'm here with you. Bring your attention to where your knee and my hand are meeting. What does that feel like? Can you nod if I can keep doing this, or shake your head if you don't? Don't ask them to verbalize it. You just begin working very gently. And then if you see the physiology responding, you'll begin to see more movement. And when you see the movement, you can start naming it. Yeah, I notice your lips are trembling. I wonder what's coming up. Would it be okay if we sat with that? Invite them to be with the feeling, to be with the movement. No analyzing, no interpreting, being with it, and then coaching the physiology into a melting response. And then following wherever it wants to go next. Sometimes it goes into rage. Sometimes it goes into sobbing. You know, sometimes it goes into spaciness and dizziness. Okay. Now, there's a lot of confusion about this because the way that we're dysfunctional in our culture is when you have a feeling, you have to follow your feelings and act on your feelings and express your feelings and empathize with your feelings. And it's almost like feelings become like this God that we serve. And then the other thing is, no, feelings are bad and they need to be controlled and repressed and managed and contained and private and not expressed, and they're inappropriate and they're unprofessional. So we've got this split going on with feelings, where we either make them more important than they need to be, or we make them irrelevant. And they're neither. They are states that arise within us. And we have different things that we need to practice depending on your own patterns. But some people need to actually wake up their feelings more and inhabit their feelings more in their bodies because they're so disconnected from them, they're only in their minds. And some people need to develop a sense of agency over their feelings, where their decisions are not only feeling based, where feelings, how you're feeling, is a part of the data you're using, but you don't have a compulsive decision tied to a feeling. Because I feel this, I have to do this. I feel it, and now I see a bunch of choices about what I'm going to do with that feeling. And to the degree that you can take that feeling and connect it to a need, you're going to have an even more powerful and life-affirming response. because you're doing a different meaning making. That habit will build. But I'm also arguing at the same time, I want to add this piece, because behavior control is only the surface of what's actually going on in that moment. One piece is, can I simply get agency over a compulsive behavior? Now, I can do that, but if I haven't developed insight and I haven't connected it to the deeper need, it's going to morph into a new behavior, because the need will come out another way. So if I can no longer do it through chocolate, I'm going to do it in another way. Mm-hmm. And so this is why you often see when people are struggling with addictions, that addictions change from one thing to another thing to another thing. Like they can quit cigarettes, and then they can quit alcohol, and they can quit chocolate, but then they start gambling, and then they can quit gambling, but then they start over exercising, and then they start, you see what I'm saying? Because the reason why something is there in the first place, remember, is a strategy to meet a need. So it's not powerful enough to only get agency over the strategy. That's just solving the symptom. We do want to drop down and find out what's happening in the deeper layers of the psyche. And what's often happening is that these strategies are ways of our best way of trying to soothe ourselves, to regulate ourselves, to nurture ourselves, to fill ourselves up in a way that we were not filled up when we were supposed to be filled up as children. And so to the degree that we're not conscious of that, we will keep reenacting it. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to get conscious of that, because getting conscious of it often means going back in and feeling pain that we've stored. And that's a hard sell for a lot of people. When you bring your patterns, remember how I said like your reptilian system will hijack and your nervous system can hijack your consciousness. As you begin doing healing work, and as you begin bringing that pain up and greeting it with compassion and healing that pain, which often involves like sobbing something out, crying something out, bringing empathy to something that never had empathy before, making connections and understanding why something is operating the way that it is inside of you. As you bring these things up, as you bring the light of awareness to these patterns, they subside back into you with less charge. The charge and the power and the compulsion has been neutralized. You've brought up the charge, you've witnessed it, you've embraced it, you've loved it up, you've brought it into consciousness, you've discharged. I mean, that's why we come up with the word discharge. We literally need to discharge an electrical circuit that keeps looping inside of you. And then when it goes back down, that's when your intuition becomes more and more reliable. So the more inner work you've done, the more healing work you've done, the more robust your intuitive system is. But if you have a lot of unhealed trauma, your intuition system is getting hijacked by survival strategies. And then it gets confusing.